Trev, the final part of this one is we're going to have a little bit of fun with this one, right? So we gave you the analysis, we broke it all down, we told you all the things that Notre Dame needs to do and what Indiana is, and I hope you guys enjoyed that breakdown. This last part, Trev, we're going to talk about game wreckers. And we're going to talk about why they're important. That's analysis. And then after that, we're going to have some fun. And we're going to predict who we think the game wreckers are going to be for Notre Dame on offense in this game. So we'll give you why it's important. We'll talk about some potential Indiana game wreckers that you have to have a plan for. And then we'll have our fun with our predictions of who we think the game wreckers are going to be. And what are game wreckers, right? Those are guys that make the big money plays in big games, right? Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, game wreckers. I mean, you think you got it bottled up. It's like we've watched games this year where Jadarian's like -2, +1, +0, -4, 60. I mean, like that. It's like, dude, you think it's like, oh, Jadarian's not having a good game today, and then boom, he goes for 6. Jeremiah is very similar in that regard, although I think Jeremiah is the more efficient of the two. Riley Leonard is the kind of guy that doesn't look like he's having a big game, and then all of a sudden he makes 2 guys miss in the backfield, takes off running, and boom, he's got 40. You've got those guys on offense. You've got those guys on defense. Riley Mills just completely taking over a couple games the second half of the year. Xavier Watts has been a game wrecker this season. Leonard Moore and Christian Gray have had their moments where they have shown some game wrecker ability. You've got those type of guys can take over a game and either dominate for 60 minutes or dominate the big keys. I always said Khalid Kareem. I've said this before. I said it, I think, last week, why Khalid Kareem was one of my favorite players ever at Notre Dame as far as defensive linemen is because Khalid Kareem was one of the most clutch defensive linemen Notre Dame's ever had. If you needed a stop, if you needed a sack in a key moment of a big game, you just kind of felt like, don't worry, Khalid at some point in time in this game is going to step up and make a play. That's just kind of how I felt he always was as a player. That's a game wrecker. Or you'd have, and whereas Julian Aguara wasn't necessarily that, but Julian was always like a 3-sack game waiting to happen. There's different ways to be game wreckers. And that's what they need to have. And a big part of winning a game like this between 2 outstanding football teams is whose game wreckers step up and have the best performance. That's the big key because, hey, the coaching is both really good. The talent's really good. The scheme is going to be good. Who steps up and says, on this 3rd and 5, this ball is mine. I don't care that you have it defended well. I don't care that you're in a good position. For like Bo Collins against Texas A&M, Jaden Greathouse runs that good route, gets open on 3rd down. But then the play that really got that drive going was Will Lee was in good position against Bo Collins, but Riley put it where it needed to be, and Bo made a great catch. Didn't matter how good the coverage was, Bo was making that play. And that really sparked that game-winning drive for Notre Dame against them. Those are the things you look at. I mean, you think of, Louisville. Notre Dame's beaten Louisville by double digits most of the game. Louisville scores late in the 4th quarter to make it a 7-point game. And what does Notre Dame do? Bomb to Jaden Harrison, screen to Jeremiah Love, touchdown, ball game. Right? Like game wreckers. And those are the things you need. Teams driving, and you think they're about to make a big play, and then boom, Xavier Watts picks you off. Christian Gray picks you off. Like, you think of we talked about this. The moment where I felt Notre Dame's season turned around was 7-7 ball game. Louisville's backed up inside their own 5 because of a great forced fumble by Drake Bowen. And Notre Dame has a big mistake on defense. Kingston overplays a read zone, and Tyler Shuck pulls it, and he's out the gate. At first, I thought he was going to score. Then I was like, okay, Xavier's got him. Xavier had an angle. He's going to tackle him around midfield. And out of nowhere, Leonard Moore comes up behind him and knocks the ball out. Game wrecker. What happens? Instead of Louisville going down and scoring again, and Notre Dame is just shook. They hadn't played well the week before. You talk about how they were playing that game, and then the offense responds and goes down and scores a touchdown, and all of a sudden that game was never quite the same, Trevor. Louisville was never really in the game again after that. And how did they score? Okay, right? 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7. You have Jadarian Price ripping off he bounces it out to the left, 16-yard gain, right? Gets him into scoring zone 2 plays later. Riley Leonard finds Jaden Greathouse open for a big play, 34-yard touchdown, and Notre Dame never trailed again rest of the game. Game wreckers, right? And that's what you need, and that's what you have to prevent from happening with the other team. So that's what a game wrecker is. And when you look at Indiana, You can't let Elijah Surratt be a game wrecker on offense. You can't let Curtis Rourke wreck you by having time to throw the football all game. On the other side of the ball, you can't let Mikhail Kamara wreck you with this pass rush. You can't let C.J. West control the middle line of scrimmage the way that you allowed Zeke Biggers to do against Georgia Tech, right? And you can't allow their secondary to make big plays in the pass game to get them the ball. That's the game wreckers for Indiana you got to be careful about. Notre Dame needs game wreckers to step up if they're going to not only win, but win in a way to where you feel like they're building some momentum for a run. At the end of the day, winning by one is all that matters. But we've also said we are believers in momentum and playing in a way where you feel like, hey, we're rolling right now. Game wreckers have to step up. So what we're going to do, Travis, we're going to have some fun with this last section. We're going to predict game wreckers on both sides of the ball. You're going to pick two. I'm going to pick two. We're going to talk about why we're predicting that, and then what that would mean for Notre Dame. We'll do that on both sides of the ball and have some fun with it. So did I miss anything in that game wreckers conversation, Trevor, about why it's such an important part of it, especially in this magnitude of a game?
No, man, I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly, and I'm going to reference it again, and I'm going to continue to do so. Look at championship weekend. Look at who went and balled out for their teams. It was their dudes. I've said it before. Game wreckers, simply put, your dudes got to go be dudes.
Yep.
Yes, it's nice to have those unsung heroes that kind of come up and, the Hunter Renfros of the world, the O.J. Howards of the world. You need both. But at the end of the day, that's not set up unless Mike Williams goes for over 100 yards receiving in the national championship. Right? You go through and you look at the Georgia-Texas game, and Texas's number one wide receiver, Matt Golden. Their number one overall receiver is their tight end, but Matt Golden went for 8 for $162. Trevor Etienne for Georgia went for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. You look at Kevin Jennings.
He had a dude in the second half of that game, dude.
Yes. You go through and you look at Kevin Jennings had 339 total yards of offense and 4 total touchdowns against Clemson. Cade Klubnik's their dude. He had 262 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, no turnovers. You look at what the 2 running backs did from Penn State and what Tyler Warren did.
Yep.
It's no mystery to me that Oregon, Dylan Gabriel balled out, and then so did Tez Johnson. Duh. You know what I'm saying? So, that's why I love – sorry. That's why I love in the playoffs and in big game moments, big players, dudes will go out and be dudes, and that's what's going to be fun to watch about this game, man.
When we talk about Indiana, I mean, the one game they lost, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you had some of your dudes stepping up and making big plays, right? I mean, you think of the big catch, the touchdown catch that Emeka had. You think of the big run that Travion Henderson had. You think of Caleb Downs going out and returning that punt for a touchdown, and breaking that game completely open. I mean, those are the things you talk about, Trev. I mean, what was the score? It was 14-7, right?
Yeah.
And what happens, right? Coming out of the second half, Ohio State forces a 3-and-out, and boom. 79-yard punt return, and Indiana was never in the game again after that. Just those are the things you look at and say you got to make those plays. I mean, Cody Simon was a game wrecker for Ohio State in that game. When you think of the forced fumble that he had and some of the big plays he had in that game, you're just like, that dude was wrecking that entire offense. You just had no chance because of the way that Cody Simon was playing in that game. Caleb Downs was a game wrecker in that game. You look at all those things, Trevor, and that's what the studs do, right? Cody Simon against Indiana, 10 tackles, 2.5 sacks, wrecked the game. Caleb Downs returning a punt for a touchdown, also had had 5 pass breakups in the game. I mean, those are the things you look at and say, you want to beat a team like this, you need to have those type of individual performances where your studs go out there and be studs. And Indiana's going to try to do the same thing. If we were doing this show breaking Indiana down, we'd be doing the same thing. We'd talk about, hey, look, Elijah Surratt, you're our dude. We need you to be a dude. Curtis Rourke, you've been need you to be that guy. You know what I mean? And, hey, Mikhail Kamara, first team all Big Ten, 15 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. You got to be that dude. You know what I mean? We need you to be that dude. And so those are the things you look at for Notre Dame. Those are the kind of players you need to be, right? I mean, you go through the whole season, close ball game. It's 14-0 Boise State against UNLV. 14-0, and UNLV is doing a pretty good job of keeping Boise State in check, right? What happens with 30 seconds left in the half? Ashton Genty goes off and rips off a 75-yard touchdown run. I mean, that's what happens in those type of games. You talked about Kevin Jennings. You know, you talk about what he did in that game. You talk about what Cade Klubnik made some big-time plays and runs in that game. You look at the Oregon game. Tess Johnson went off in that game. Which countered what the dudes for what Penn State did in that game. You look at what Cam Skattebo did in that game. Everybody on the planet knew that Cam Skattebo was carrying the ball in that game. There were certain situations on third and third. They knew who was going to ball. Didn't matter. Couldn't stop them. And that's what championship teams do, right? I mean, we've talked about, like, it wasn't Mike Williams that sparked Clemson in that game. It was Deion Kane. But who then took over? It was Deshaun and Mike Williams, right? Those are the things you talk about, and Notre Dame's going to need that. So let's have some fun making predictions, Trevor. Who are the game wreckers going to be on the Notre Dame offense against Indiana? If the Irish win this game, and we look back, you're going to predict who were the game wreckers for the Irish.
And I'm picking two on offense, right? First one, and I told you guys I was going to talk about this yesterday, the tight ends, specifically Mitchell Evans, I think holds a major key in getting this offense going, right? Here's why, and I have some stats to back this up. Most of the time, Notre Dame's tight ends will be matched up on their linebackers and their safeties. Now, Aiden Fisher, Jalen Walker, they're two linebackers. Amari Farrell and Sean Asbury are their two safeties. That group combined this season has given up 109 receptions for 972 yards and 3 touchdowns. They allow receptions on 72.4% of all of their targets. So what does that mean from a game-to-game standpoint? That quad of players gives up about 9 receptions a game on average, with the most one being Aiden Fisher, who got targeted 51 times this year. So per game, he's getting targeted at least 4 times, give or take. So what does that mean from Notre Dame's standpoint? I went and I broke down where the tight ends are. Now, Mitchell Evans is by far the most targeted out of the tight end room. Like, he has 39 targets on the season. The next closest is Eli Raritan with 10. But the thing that I found interesting with them is they have 40 as a tight end room. Mitchell Evans, Eli Raritan, and Cooper Flanagan. They have 41 receptions on the season and 7 touchdowns. So 17% of the time when they're getting the football, they're scoring touchdowns. Okay, they get receptions on 70.5% of their targets. That's the statistical matchup. From a physical standpoint, Jalen Walker and Aiden Fisher are both 6'1" guys. Sean Asbury is 5'11". Amari Farrell's 6'2". He has good size at safety.
Sean Asbury's listed at 5'11".
I was giving his in cleats and helmet on height
right.
and weight. Yeah, but you know, you go through and look, and Notre Dame's smallest tight end is Mitch Evans at 6'5.5". You know, we saw what a slot fade with Eli Raritan looked like against a 6'1" linebacker against USC. Fair. I mean, just not fair. Not fair in the slightest. So am I expecting that all 3 of these guys go out and they all have the game of their lives? Would I be upset if that happened? No. Am I predicting that to happen? No. But Mitchell Evans is a guy where Bryan and I both sat down and talked about, if he can get going in the postseason and come back as close to the form as he was in that middle of the season 2023 run, this Notre Dame offense is going to be really hard to stop. And he's coming off of his best game of the season against USC, where he had 5 receptions for 59 yards and a touchdown. So for me, game record number 1 on offense is going to be Mitchell Evans. My second one on offense, that's what we're doing, right?
We're just doing offense today. We'll do defense tomorrow. Yeah.
My second one on offense, and some of it kind of might be that, you know, no duh kind of thing. But for me, it's Riley Leonard. He is not a quarterback. I'm sorry. He is not a quarterback that Indiana has faced this season. And when we were breaking down Notre Dame's passing attack, we highlighted all of the improvements that he made this season. I mean, he went from 129th in all of college football in passing efficiency to 38th. You know, his yards per game average is going up. He's becoming a more effective member of the passing attack and not just being relied on for his legs. There will be moments throughout this playoff that Riley Leonard will have to go out and be that dude. He will have to go out and be the 2023 version of himself at Duke when they were playing Clemson. He will have to go out and be, I mean, honestly, that 2023 version of himself in moments in the Notre Dame game. You know, so Riley Leonard is going to have an integral role in this offense because they do have those supporting roles. They have Jeremiah Love. They have Jadarian Price. The receivers have to have a breakout game. But for all of those things to happen, the person under center conducting it and how it's going has to be top of mind. Riley Leonard's the guy behind center calling out the different protections. We just broke down how intricate some of IU's defensive line games can be. I just got done talking about Mitchell Evans and how he has to go off and all the targets that he's getting. Well, in order for him to get targets, Riley Leonard's going to have to facilitate. So my two are Mitchell Evans and Riley Leonard.
I dig it. So I don't want to repeat one you did, so I was angrily crossing off Riley Leonard.
I'm sorry.
Crapper. All right. So the one that I did have, Trevor, and I'm actually surprised you didn't go with this one, number 2. I thought if you were going to take one of mine, I thought this would be the one. Number 1 is I think one of the 2 slots goes off. Maybe both of them together. Either Jaden Harrison or Jaden Greathouse. One of those 2 is going to go off. For somewhat similar reasons that I think you mentioned. I think they're going to bring that nickel fire a lot. They're going to put those, which is going to put Notre Dame in situations where their slot receivers have to pick up. I think Notre Dame's running backs for the most part have been pretty good with blitz pickup this season. And I think that they're going to pick a couple of those up. You're going to get some situations where Jaden and Jeremiah, or Jaden and Jaden, right? Jaden with a Y and Jaden without a Y are going to go off a little bit and have some big plays. Maybe it's both of them together and you add them together and they were impactful, but I think at least one of those 2 really goes off in this game. I think it's partly about matchups, right? I mean, it's partly about, their safeties are good players. They're not great cover players, in my opinion. They're guys that I think Notre Dame's guys can have some success with, in my opinion. And I really thought about picking an outside receiver, Trevor, but I'm at the point now where I gotta see it to believe it. I gotta see that Bo Collins is going to be that guy. I gotta see that Chris Mitchell is going to do that. I gotta see that Jordan Faison is going to do that. With these 2 kids, we've seen them be those type of things. I mean, you think about Jaden Greathouse just breaking that Navy game open with that big play on 3rd down early in the game. We've seen him with some super clutch 3rd down plays, because being a game wrecker sometimes isn't just about ripping off 40-yard gains, but it's like, okay, 3 of his first 4 receptions are on 3rd down against one of the best 3rd down defenses in college football. Those are all parts of it that you look at and say that's wrecking a game. It's like, okay, Jeremiah Love. We talk a lot about that Bo Collins back shoulder play.
Yeah.
Well, it was Jaden winning on 3rd down to get open and convert that 3rd down that even gave them that chance to get there.
Right.
Those type of plays too can be game-wrecking type of plays. And here's a crazy stat for you. When you look at Notre Dame statistics, and again, this is from Pro Football Focus. I think this is a great statistic, Trevor. When I looked this up, I saw this and I was like, well, this doesn't surprise me at all. But if you look at 3rd down catches, Jaden Greathouse, Mitchell Evans, and Bo Collins are all tied for number 1 with 15. Bo Collins has been targeted 54 times. Jaden Greathouse has been targeted 35 times on 3rd down. And they have the same number of, or not 3rd down, same number of targets as far as picking up first downs. And so a little under half of Jaden Greathouse's catches have gone for first downs. And if you think about it and you go through it, he's had a lot of good 3rd down catches this season. And he had that big drop against Northern Illinois. He hasn't dropped the ball since. I mean, he's been money since then. Mm-hmm. And he's also Pro Football Focus, 4 catches on 5 contested targets, right? That's a very good rate for him in that situation. And so I look at those 2 guys and I'm saying those guys to me are going to be impactful in this game. I had Riley Leonard as my other one just for the reasons that you talked about, as far as he's just going to have to make big time throws. He's going to have to move the chains. He's going to have to be a good 3rd down runner, good 4th down runner. He's going to have to be good there. But I think the other part of it is one of the 2 backs is going to go off in this game with some big plays, whether it's Love or Price. I don't know which one, but the way that you take Indiana's soul in this game is you run on them. Because Trevor, you and I have been. You played high school football. I played high school football. Played college football. I've coached. You're doing what you do now because you have a great mind for the game. We watch a lot of football. You see it in games when a team goes into a game and they're great at something, and the other team goes right at them. And I remember watching the perfect example, the 2012 BCS game between Notre Dame and Alabama. When Alabama came out early in that game and was gashing that Notre Dame defense, you could just see the look in the Notre Dame players' eyes like, wait a minute, what's going on? This isn't supposed to happen to us. We don't get run on. Nobody runs on us. And Alabama was gashing. I mean, you could just see the whole, like just the wind come out of the sails of the Notre Dame team. Like, holy crap, we're in trouble because they're doing the one thing that nobody's been able to do on us all year. And if their backs come out and start gashing Indiana, like Jeremiah Love did to USC, we talked about this. USC's defense coming in the Notre Dame game was playing at a very high level coming into that game. They were not giving up a lot of yards in that coming into that game. They had a couple games early where they'd given up some decent amount of yards, but as we talked about in the 6 games before the Notre Dame game, they'd given up 118 to Penn State on 3.8 per carry, 56 to Maryland, 121 to Rutgers, 113 against Washington, 119 to Nebraska, 111 to UCLA. If you want to took some comparisons, you want to have a little bit of fun with this one, Trev, let's look at this. So some of that, so during that stretch where Indiana or USC was playing great run defense, they held Penn State to 118. Indiana didn't play Penn State, but they did hold Ohio State to 115. Penn State had a better rushing attack this year than Ohio State did. All right. They held Maryland to 56 yards rushing. Maryland had 112 against Indiana. They held Rutgers to 121. Rutgers obviously didn't play Indiana. Rutgers had a 1,000-yard back this season. That was one of the best run-stopping performances anybody had against Rutgers this season. This Rutgers team also rushed for 213 yards against Illinois, just to kind of put that out there. And they held them to 121, 2.9 per carry. They held Washington 113. Indiana held Washington to 116. They held Nebraska to 119. Indiana did better there, held them to 70. They held UCLA to 111, and Indiana held them to 96. 4.3 per carry for USC, 3.7 for UCLA. Very similar number. That was all leading into that Notre Dame game. Notre Dame went for 258 and 6.8 yards a carry. So, and you could just see it early when they were just gashing USC. They were just kind of like, this is going to be a long day, isn't it?
That first Jeremiah Love run set the tone because, I mean, one, he burst through the line of scrimmage and went untouched for 9 yards, 12 yards, and then got an additional push for another 5 to 6. And that was the moment, first play of the game on offense for Notre Dame, where I was like, yeah, this is going to be a long one for USC. Because you're right, man. I mean, we've played in games, you've coached in games where a team comes in and takes away one of the things that you feel confident in, and you're just like, oh, well, here we go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's
right.
And Notre Dame, to your point, has done a great job of doing that to opponents all year. You know, I mean, in multiple different ways. You know, teams have came in playing Notre Dame that don't give up turnovers. You know, and then what does Notre Dame do? They force not just one; they will force multiple. You know, Notre Dame comes into playing a defense that's really good at stopping the run, and Notre Dame's like, yeah, you're pretty good at it, not good enough to stop what we got going on. And so that's what's going to make this matchup fun, man.
Yeah, and they tend to come in bunches. Talk more about that tomorrow. But when you look at the Notre Dame team this year, that sometimes those turnovers kind of come in bunches. You know, they had like a couple back-to-back against Texas A&M. Think about that Virginia game. I think it was like 3 in a row.
Yeah,
that they had, where it's just like, it's a game where it was 7-0, and you knew Notre Dame was going to win. Notre Dame forced a fumble from Kobe Pace, and they went 80 yards and scored a touchdown. They're up 14-0, and there's like couple minutes left in the half. They have a interception that Adon Schuler runs back to the 2-yard line, and Notre Dame punches it in the next play. The very next drive, Xavier Watts has an interception. Notre Dame goes down and scores then. And then they had it. Oh, actually, wait a minute. The first one was that Leonard Moore? No, it was Adon Schuler had the first one. Who had the second one? Leonard Moore had the second one.
Leonard Moore had the second.
And then they go down and score. And then Xavier picks another one off, and they should have gotten field goal range. Well, kicked the long field goal, missed it. But just comes in bunches. USC, you had the back-to-back pick sixes that put that game away. Speaking of USC, Trev, we're going to get out of here with a buy-sell hold from Iden Benami. Iden Benami, who I think is upset that we're not doing a buy-sell hold tomorrow. So he's going to get one in here. We appreciate you, Iden. He said, is USC a better overall team than Indiana? And the answer is a very clear, obvious, easy, no, they're not. Because of the way you phrase it, are they a better team? No, because if they were a better team, they wouldn't be 6-6 in the same exact league as what Indiana is in. And look,
Right.
they played similar opponents. Indiana beat Maryland by 14. USC lost to Maryland. I mean, so Indiana beat USC by 14. USC lost to Washington. So they've played similar opponents. Indiana beat Michigan. USC lost to Michigan. So that they've played similar teams this season, Trevor, and Indiana beats them and USC doesn't. Now, if you wanted to ask, is USC a more talented team than Indiana? I would buy that.
Yep.
But this is where I think ESPN consistently gets wrong the playoff rankings and all this. They always look at talent. Well, Ole Miss is clearly one of the most talented. They may be one of the most talented teams. Bama may be one of the most talented teams, but they're not one of the best teams. Because best is defined by your results, not your talent. Florida State does not have a 2-10 roster. They are a 2-10 team. Indiana does not have an 11-1 roster, but they are without a doubt an 11-1 team. USC has an 11-1 roster. They're a 6-6 team. There's a difference. So if you were to ask me, buy so hold, Trevor, buy so hold, USC is a more talented team top to bottom than Indiana. Your answer would be what?
Sell.
More talented team? USC is more talented?
Buy. Sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Buy. Talented.
Now, second one, what he said, USC is a better overall team than Indiana. Your answer would be sell. Exactly. We're same exact page. I knew what you meant. I think you didn't. You were reading what he said, what he wrote, not what I said. I kind of fooled you on that one accidentally. But you're exactly right, Trevor. More talented? Yes. Better team? Absolutely not. Not nearly as well coached. Not nearly as disciplined.
No.
Not nearly as sound. Not nearly as clutch. They don't play as hard as the Indiana kids. Not that USC doesn't play hard. That's one thing I give USC credit for. They never punked out. We all said before the season, if they lose games early, they will quit. One guy quit on that team. One guy. Everybody else battled. They battled Notre Dame. They had nothing to play for in that game, but they played.
Sure did.
Some people are like, they're not going to play hard. They don't care about the rivalry. They played.
Mm-hmm.
And I give them a lot, those players and especially the defensive staff, a lot of credit for that.
Yep.
But I'll say that's the final thing too that I think was one thing that is a bit of an advantage for Notre Dame is they have played some defenses like Indiana schematically late in the year. USC does a lot of different stuff from a lot of different angles. Army throws a lot of different funky stuff at you. Navy throws a lot of different funky stuff at you. They've had to prepare for some of this funky stuff before. This won't be what they do is different, but the philosophy is something that Notre Dame has faced before. And Notre Dame has, for the most part, handled it well, but Indiana, I'd say, does it better than those other teams. The reason I say they do it better is because I think Indiana and Army are very similarly well coached and tough and all that, but Indiana just has better players.
Yeah.
They just have better players than Army does.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the difference.
Agreed.
So, Trev, that's where we're at, man. That's where we're at. You want to take us out here today?
Yeah, man, let's do it. Hey, thank you guys for being a part of this for the last couple, 2 hours and some change. There is going to be a lot more breakdown coming throughout the rest of this week on the boards. Bryan and I are going to be back here tomorrow at 2 to break down essentially this show, but on the defensive side. And we're going to talk about what Notre Dame's defense has to do. And then Thursday, of course, we are going to be back with the Keys to Victory show, where we're going to break down what Notre Dame has to do, the areas that they have to win. And then I believe after that, you're going live with Bill Bender, right, to talk about the other slate of the college football playoff games. So
that show may start at 1, by the way, so just be on the alert for that one.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, in order to stay in the now and know when we are going live, make sure you hit that notification bell to know when Irish Breakdown goes live. Also, be sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button, and share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame as much as you do. And, of course, the best way that you can support us is subscribing to the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, for Bryan, I'm Trev. We will see you guys back here tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.